I think the team is really excited to be working on the Elder Scrolls Online. I mean, one of the reasons I joined the studio was because it was Elder Scrolls. So the team, being huge fans, are as equally excited to get out more details as possible. But we have to be very careful about what we show. So the world is going to be full of interactivity. It's going to have a huge breadth and scope, and really you're going to be able to play the way you want to play. What the team has really learned as we've actually just worked on the Elder Scrolls is what it means to us. What are all the different things? So the team is, whether you're your own best critic or your own worst critic, what we'll say is it's not interactive enough yet. The quests, for instance, they don't feel enough like it's a story-driven quest is something we do. And so we've taken all of this while we've been developing the game and saying, well, we want to make sure the quests are absolutely story-driven, so we take our time with quests. It's not something that's a simple task where you go back and forth, for instance. With combat, we felt like, well, maybe it's not active enough, so the team has spent a lot of time to take away interface elements to really draw the player into the world and make the most engaging experience possible. And then it's some natural things that come out of Elder Scrolls, like it's active, it's reactive combat. And so the combat system feels, I would say, extremely different from anything you've played before. It feels great. The closest thing I can actually say our combat feels like is Skyrim's combat in a lot of ways. Part of the reason why we've taken away the interface elements, or it's not really taken away, but it's reduced the impact, is because we want the player engaged in the world. We want them absolutely drawn in. So for instance, our AI. Our AI, or our enemies that the players will fight, will actually have moves that they do that the player has to kind of watch on the screen for. And then that becomes, it's an interesting thing because we give you these core mechanics to deal with it, like the block, maybe like crouch, there's interrupts. I can hold down a button, right? I can hold down a button, and when I hold that button down, it actually makes my attack more powerful. So when I let go of that attack, or where in the cycle I let go of that attack determines how hard I hit, but also it makes me a little vulnerable when I'm hitting it. It's really, simple things to understand as a player. So it's really simple to understand, but when you mix all the strategies together, you get a lot of depth and a lot of complexity, and that's one of those things. It's like chess. There's only so many moves for your pieces, but when you put it all together, it becomes this really complex kind of deep system, and I think that's one of the things I've liked the most is how much depth we get out of simple core mechanics. One of the things we've really tried to do is make sure that players are rewarded for how they play. So it's not just a matter of, okay, I did poorly and I died, and now I have to be penalized for that. It's more of, we say, well, if you want the best loot in the game, or you want the best stuff that you can get, if you play really well, if you use these core mechanics effectively, if you do combat effectively, then we're going to reward you even more. So there will be things that you see in the world like better loot for playing better. So, and also, we have a system called finesse. So when you use your moves effectively, your finesse grows. And so the more your finesse grows, we have a move called, kind of internally we're calling it ultimate. I don't know what it will be at the end, but and when you throw off that ultimate move, it's this incredible feeling of power, like, okay, I got something off. So you're really working towards something. Even in a single combat, you feel like, hey, I'm playing a game here, I've got something I'm trying to do, and the people who play the best are obviously going to be rewarded more. When we change the world in game, it's changed from your perspective. That it doesn't change how you feel about the story, because you just see, oh, wow, there's a statue here that wasn't here before because of something I did, or the world changed in some other way because of something I did. And that is very personal to you. If somebody else isn't in that place, they haven't seen those changes, or they didn't do whatever needed to be done to make those changes, then they would see the world based off their perspective and their view. But we're also very cautious about separating our players, and we know that that's a real concern. So we've taken every precaution to make sure that when you experience a story, it's your story. The choices you make, the way you go is really represented in the world, but at the same time, it doesn't impact somebody adversely who maybe wouldn't have made that same choice. When we made the decision for our players to be able to play on lower-end machines, lower-spec machines, those machines, and the reason we feel comfortable in doing that is because it's not always about, does it have the best engine, or, what can it do? Can it, push the most pixels? It's really about, is the art style gorgeous? Does it look really good? And I think, anybody who looks at our game and who sees the environments we're creating, they'll see, well, this really does look gorgeous. And more than that, it looks like Elder Scrolls. So since we're covering such a huge breadth of the of Tamriel, our art style has to encompass all of the different cultures in Elder Scrolls, right? So that's one of the big things that we've really tried to do, is make sure that that looks good. But we have the ability to have 200 players on the screen at the same time. if of course we're going to have to make trade-offs and compromises to make sure that that can happen, but when you look at it, I don't think as a player you're going to say, oh, that doesn't look great. I think you're just going to say, this looks amazing. I'm really happy to be in this world. We're really not talking about the business model at this point. What I can tell you is the team is very committed to making sure that there is a ton of gameplay in the game. So that means, we want people to be playing. They'll have, I mean, the world is huge, so they'll be able to play a long time in the game and have a really great experience.